Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now, one thing about President Trump that everyone will agree on is that he's smashed the old rules of political communication. He's dispensed with the conventions of political spin and obfuscation and reset the relationship between government and the media. Now, there's one man who did more than anyone to expose the nonsenses of those old rules, and that is Armando Iannucci, the creator of The Thick of It, bitingly satirising political spin and the clenched butt message control of New Labour, and back in the 90s producing The Day-to-Day, parodying programmes like this with fake seriousness, if not fake news.
Susanna Gekelois has broken through to the front line. This is her contribution to history.
This is the very heart of the conflict. The men here have been fighting non-stop for 3 days. We drove in at night, straight into the middle of a rocket battle.
The air now is thick with what they call here the electric cornflakes. We're under strict instructions not to leave the vehicle, but to drive on through.
With no cover, we ran across open space to a nearby house. We found an injured man. We did our best. There are always casualties in war. There was a family sheltering in the back room. We had no tongue in common, but through the universal language of mutual need, I knew she was saying, "Come, set your equipment up in our refuge. The world must see this mess." These brave people are now sleeping, but they know that tomorrow our aerials and transmitters could make this house a prime target. Chris.
Well, Armando Iannucci is out with me. The world has changed quite a bit since The Day-to-Day and The Thick of It, and indeed since Veep, the series he created in the US. So we're now, for him, the world and comedy. Good evening. As you look at the world, are you laughing very much at politics at the moment?
No. I should be, but I remember the night. I'm an avid watcher of political shows. I make
how you're
these
so
shows
good
because
at mimicking
I enjoy it, and I got very heavily involved in watching the American election coverage until the result, and then I actually couldn't watch television for about a week, or indeed read a newspaper.
You're tweeting an awful lot on Donald Trump, about 2 or 3 a day, or retweets.
Yeah.
And actually, we had Tom Friedman of the New York Times on this programme. He said, if you try and fight the guy or take him on, he'll suck your brain out.
Yeah.
And I wonder whether he is sucking your brain out a bit.
That is his genius. And I think the great mistake is to portray him as an idiot, because he's not. He knows what he's doing, and he's very clever. He's a very clever salesman. And that's what he's been doing for the last year and a half, is selling this model of the successful businessman who believes everything he says and is persuadable enough to get, a sizable amount of the electorate to vote for him.
I mean, how did we get here? Let me put one suggestion to you. You spent the 2000s mocking the kind of controlled, careful politics of New Labour, message, clearly delineated, a bit of the PC stuff.
Yeah.
And hey, the public rebelled against it. They took your message and said, we want to try someone completely.
For Donald Trump.
Well, I'm not. But you have to be careful what you wish for. This is the opposite of New Labour,
so,
right?
Somewhere at the thick of it arose a real genuine frustration and anger that, in my particular case, that we could go to war with Iraq despite millions of us protesting in the street, and every expert in the UK and across the world saying this would be a disaster, and it proving the case. And I took that sense of frustration, that sense that politicians weren't really connecting with the people, and produced something like The Thick of It, which was also looking at the notion that politicians were concentrating more and more on a smaller and smaller group of people, the Middle England, the
Mondeo man and Worcester woman, or whatever the phrases were, right?
The squeezed middle, the tiny amount of people who can swing an election, and in the course of doing that, just taking for granted everyone else. And as the years have gone by, that group of people we're taking for granted has become like 80%, 85%, which is why you get this level of frustration.
And I should say, you told the FT, the Financial Times, in 2012, you said all of this. You said there's seething anger, people don't know where to direct it, everything's become polarised, people don't mind their system is being held up to ridicule because that articulates what they're feeling. But what's really interesting is what you've just given, this account of kind of people who felt cut off from politics. That is what the populists, as we call them, or people call them, that's their appeal. That's what Donald Trump says. He says they forgot, Rust Belt US, Hillary Clinton left that out. And yet you don't really like Trump, I'm guessing, and you're not a kind of Trump fan. So the people who were left out didn't like the things you wanted. They wanted other stuff.
There are actually people being left out on the right and the left. That's why in the UK we've got, Momentum and UKIP, and we've really got the rise of personalities. We've got, instead of parties, we've got Corbyn Labour, and we've got Boris Johnson conservatism and Theresa May conservatism. We've got factions. We don't really have anything that resembles the two or the three-party system that we had in the 50s and 60s right through to the 70s.
That's quite true. Well, look, you mentioned Corbyn, because one of the things that you parodied was the severe control of sort of pagers and people having to give out the line. No one would say that Corbyn's Labour is controlled. Now, do you think... Does it work or does it not work? Do you now think, I see why the Mandelsons and the Campbells were trying to do that?
I mean, what happens is you get this frustration with the, intense media management. So people are hungry for something that's entirely different, which is why we go to, Boris Johnson because he mumbles and has hilarious hair, or Jeremy Corbyn because he wears a vest and has a beard. And that has an instant appeal, and I can completely see why that has an instant appeal. Then you get to the point of trying to work out how you can actually control a party and get back into government, and that's when the chaos approach to politics doesn't work.
I mean, you've lampooned politicians. Do you respect or pity them at all? I mean, do you basically, because they do actually, a lot of them are lovely people, and they do their best.
I say to people who kind of criticise me about the thick of it, I say, actually, I find the most sympathetic characters in the thick of it. The politician, it's the minister at centre that I feel sorry for. It's the strange young people that she surrounds herself with, who have, a degree in PPE from Oxford and very little else, who are trying to run her department, that I think is the real danger.
You took some of the humour to the States with Veep about a vice president who wants to be president. And it's very funny. I mean, did you find that? Is it exactly the same? You could basically, you British guy or from Scotland, you can just go there and take the same humour and it works there? Or did you have to employ lots of writers?
I might be deported now if I tried it. But I took the thick of it writers. It was all British writers, British directors. We edited it in London.
But it's still going. You're not involved anymore, right?
Yeah, well, after 4 years of jet lag and flying backwards and forwards, I think it's also a British thing. We only do 3 or 4 series of something, and then we
do
a bit bored.
12 episodes.
In America, you're expected to do 29 series of 38 episodes a year and then die.
What about news? OK, so day to day.
Yeah.
Have you seen any improvements in the way news is covered? A lot has changed, hasn't it?
I think what's interesting is this whole business of fake news. The fact that the internet now allows anyone saying anything to make it look as valid as, the Telegraph or the Guardian or the BBC website, because it's there in typeface. And that's a real problem. And I think what the rise of Trump and his attack on the news may do is provoke people like you into thinking afresh about how you make the news, how you show that the news isn't fake. I thought it was really interesting, the item we had on yesterday, following journalists in the White House around for 5 days.
Well, I think a lot of us are hoping that people will want to come to places that have got a kind of a heritage or a
but I think it's now important for the established news programmes to show the decisions that they have to make on a daily basis.
Could you make a comedy like The Thick of It now? I mean...
I think it'd be very different, and, I wouldn't be inclined to, because I'm more concerned now about trying to energise 16 and 17-year-olds and 18-year-olds into politics. I mean, that's the real frightening thing, that they don't vote in... well, obviously they don't because they're 16 and 17, but, 18-year-olds onwards don't vote in the numbers that people over 35 and 40 vote, and that, I think that's because they've been turned off by party politics. So it was really interesting in the Scottish referendum having the votes for 16, 17-year-olds, because it really, it galvanised them, it told them that their view was important, and it made them really think and examine the issues, and I only wish that opportunity had been presented to us all in the general election.
Armando Iannucci, nice talking to you.
Thank you.